Hello, gamers. Alright, originally I wanted to do this, the answers part of this, outside, but it's been shitty and cold and windy and rainy all week, so that kind of got fucked. So this is going to be more of the standard, I'm just going to read off your questions and answer them here. And we got a bunch of them again. There's 37 comments on this video, but I think only just like 20 some questions. I don't know if it'll be a one-parter or a two-parter. We'll see how I feel. A lot of these questions end up being similar. There's some retarded questions that I won't answer like usual, but from there, I guess we'll just go. And I'm going to go from the oldest to the newest. So the first question we have up is from Dragon of Us. How do you feel about the change to Adrenaline Shield compared to Resist Shield? Do you think Adrenaline will only be usable while farming shitters, and Resist will become necessary to fight good players? For reference, the effective HP for Adrenaline will become 1440, with no nanowave compared to the 1538 EHP of Resist, or 1490, blah, 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 bullshit. Honestly, I don't feel like there's that much of a difference, because first thing I want to hit on is the distinction of farming shitters and something being necessary to fight good players. Not really a thing in live play. I mean, if you're talking about doing scrims or whatever on Jaeger, yeah, it's different, but I don't bother. I don't care about any of that. And I haven't cared about any of that for like 6+ years, so whatever. Resist and Adrenaline will both be usable for farming shitters, because it doesn't matter what shield you're using, you're still going to farm shitters. The change to Adrenaline Shield, I was thinking about this earlier. So Adrenaline Shield hasn't been touched value-wise in about 6 years. I think January 14th, 2016 was the last time it got changed, and that was the patch that changed it from 750 shield to 450 and adjusted the value of the return on kill. So my question is, that iteration of the shield lasted for 6 years, and it was fine. Apparently it was fine, because, you know, we didn't gut it. But now, 6 years later, in a random weapon attachment patch, we need to gut Adrenaline Shield? For what reason again? So I was thinking about that, and I went and I looked back at the developer note for Adrenaline Shield. So the dev note for the patch note says that returning a couple hundred effective health after winning a firefight has more value than we were balancing against with previous numbers. The changes here reduce the effectiveness of Adrenaline Shield to make more room for alternatives. Now, what the fuck does that mean? Honestly, so I tried to parse it out a little bit. So we can start with returning a couple hundred effective health after winning a firefight has more value than we were balancing against with previous numbers. So the current state of Adrenaline Shield gives more value than we were balancing against with previous numbers. What numbers are you talking about? Exactly. Does anyone know? See, like, when you write a dev note should be something that isn't fucking stupid and vague. Okay? Because if I can't read your dev note and 100% understand what the hell you're trying to get at, I have to speculate. Okay? So for me with speculating here, I mean, their big problem with Adrenaline Shield apparently is that getting, you know, what is it, 200 HP or something? Whatever the HP value is, I can't think of it right now. Whatever that value is for killing one person is more value than they are happy with. Okay. So, let me ask you this, because I think this is the real issue. So what about, there was a guy I killed. I've been playing a lot late night and farming ghost cappers. Generally, you have groups of like 8 to 12 to 15, sometimes more people that ghost cap down a lattice line and just run down the lattice line uncontested, and then I'll go there and kill them, right? So there was one guy, I don't remember his name in particular, but he's like some 0.6 KD player, and he was playing heavy the whole time, and he's playing a Dren, he's a TR heavy, and I think I killed this man like 24 times in maybe 30 minutes. Is he getting too much value from Adrenaline Shield, Rel? Or are you just, you know, a pussy and a coward, and you don't want to actually put in the patch note? When you make the patch note and the dev note, man, what you have to do is stop being a little pussy and a coward, trying to hide behind dev speak of why you're nerfing something, okay? So what you need to say, I'll rewrite it for you. Okay, so let's go into reality and rewrite the dev note here. So returning a couple hundred effective health, aka a bullet and a quarter, a bullet and a half, against a long line of one player out of the 30 players that you're playing against that are queuing up to shoot you, was giving too much value for the top 0.2% of players. So we're going to reduce the effectiveness of it by making it worse. Okay, because all we care about is how many people you can bring to a fight and catering the game to shitters who bring a bunch of people to a fight and Zorg down a lattice lane. On to the second part here. The changes here reduce the effectiveness of Adrenaline Shield to make more room for alternatives. Now, what alternatives are we? When Rel says alternatives, I think of the first thing I think of is dumb fuck shit that he's going to try to put into the game in the future. That is stupid and makes no sense. But we're not there yet. But my question is, why would you nerf? Why wouldn't you just wait until you release that thing to make room? So that's how I know that it's bullshit and it's fake. Because a normal human being that's kind of semi-intelligent will leave this thing alone, and then when you put an alternative for it in the game, then you make the adjustment to the other thing to make the new thing kind of more appealing, you know? You don't proactively fucking gut the other thing and then leave the arsenal kind of like barren and like waiting for whatever stupid idea you put in the game next. That's not how you do this. So that's the first thing I generally think of, but I think that's not the case because it's probably not going to happen. And then to make room for alternatives, well, there was a time in the game when Resist and Adrenaline kind of had some parity. Resist, for the most part, was the meta shield for a while, but there was still room. There were plenty of players that still ran Adrenaline, and it was still a viable option for them. So you actually could pretty much have a choice of what you wanted to run. And then we put carapace in the game and fuck up the game balance. So, and instead of nerfing carapace in a reasonable amount of time, we nerf resist shield instead, because people were running carapace with resist shield and getting fucking heal botted. But I mean, of course, we can't nerf carapace within about a year's time, because that makes us money in our random RNG gambling loot box system. So we have to destroy and erode core mechanics of our game to make up for the cancerous parasitic gameplay design that is the implant system. So beyond that, so we have to nerf resist shield. So we nerf resist shield by 5%, and then Rel's like, that's just not enough. That's not enough. So we're going to make another undocumented, by the way, another 5% nerf. So you nerf resist by 10% in the span of, what, a year or so? So people got frustrated and were like, resist kind of doesn't feel that great. And another problem, one of the biggest problems with resist now is the state of the servers. Resist is objectively worse if you don't have it up preemptively. That's just the way it is. And with the way the servers are now, and I mean, Emerald is like the fucking United Nations of servers, man. Like, you have all these containment zone fucking Connery players coming over. This morning I was playing, and I ran into a guy from fucking India and a guy from Australia within, I don't know, 20 minutes. Okay? And I asked the guy from India, I'm like, why is it your right to connect from fucking Bombay, India to a data center in fucking Virginia in the United States? Okay, and for those of you who don't know, Virginia is on the mid-Atlantic eastern seaboard of the United States. Okay? Why does a person from India need to be allowed to connect to Emerald? Can anyone give me a good reason why? No. The guy from Australia. I get it. You guys didn't want to play on your own server because reasons, and then you have to infect the game with your fucking 300 to 400 ping cancer, But you have Soul Tech. You have Soul Tech and you have Connery. If you're Australian, don't play on Emerald, okay? One of the first things I would do if I was in charge of the game, if you have a poor connection or a bad connection, if you have the yellow text at the top of your screen or the red text at the top of your screen, you can't connect to that server. You're not allowed. I was like, how many people do you think, what percentage of the Emerald player base plays with poor or bad connection? And I was talking with friends and thinking about maybe like 20 to 25% of the player base. Now, is that bad for the game? Not necessarily. It's just going to shift where all the shitters play on. And guess what? If you can only play this game on a poor quality connection, which this game has very, very fucking loose definitions of what a poor connection in an FPS game is. Honestly, anything above 80 is poor. That's just in any real video game. Any real FPS game above 80 is you start to run into janky shit. This game puts poor at like, what, 130? Like, it's a joke. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about latency and that's just player latency, first of all. You want to talk about server latency? The Emerald server that got its 8-hour maintenance last week or whatever the fuck it was that did absolutely nothing? The server that spikes to 400 server latency or 2200 or whatever the fuck, whenever. Like, I just won't. There's a period now, like, I think from 5 p.m. Eastern to 11 or midnight, I won't play on Emerald because it's unplayable. And they do nothing about it. They don't care. We did an 8-hour maintenance, and what did it do? It didn't do anything. So, I think Resist would be a little bit better off in a game that actually worked. Okay? And, that's how I have to look at it. I have to look at the totality of the situation. I would love to play with Resist, and in fact, I've been playing a new alt character this week, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go back and play, because when you start a new alt character and you just run like ASC and Resist, it's way cheaper than starting Adrenaline, and you're just off the ground running like super fast, right? And to be honest, I don't have that much. I mean, the character doesn't have Assimilate yet. Like, to be honest, I have pretty much exactly the same performance. It's just when the server is so bad, like you guys that play on Primetime, like, and you're running Resist, like you're a solo player playing on Primetime with Resist, like, good luck to you, man. As for all the other people who only exist in the game to jam 80 people in a point room and base all of their game design theory and knowledge base on the game based on sitting in a platoon and sitting on a point with fucking 40 medics around you and 150 retards jammed in a 30 by 30 building, good for you, man. I mean, if that's not the reality of the video game. That's one very specific play style that shitters have to do to play the game, okay? Congratulations. As for... Let me get back to the question. So, I mean, how do I feel about the change to Adrenaline? I mean, if we go back to providing alternatives, like, is Resist my alternative To be honest, I pretty much play the same with resist now as I do with adrenaline. We'll see. I want to use adrenaline for a fair bit when it comes out, and my prediction for me myself is it's not going to change anything really for me at all. So I don't really understand the change. Besides, it's more kowtowing to shit players and trying to compress the skill gap further because the top 1 to 2% of players farm shitters, and you gotta like actively seek out where, and Rel says it here, where are the top 1 and 2% players getting their value from, and how do we attack that? I'll have you know, man, like, no matter what you nerf, no matter what value you take away from me, you can't take away the inherent value of positioning and aim. Because your players that you're trying to coddle and protect from me, they don't have those things and they never will. So unless you can find a way to literally take away my ability to aim or literally take away my ability to position to protect your shit players that you just want to coddle, unless you find a way to do that, you're going to go out of your way to destroy everything in your game to try to stop players like me. Because no matter what you do to destroy your game and try to nerf me, I'm always going to farm your shit players. And that's the thing that amateur retarded developers don't seem to get. A lot of the older developers in games, you see, they understand this concept already, that it's not worth destroying your game to try to stop the best players from farming your worst players. Okay? But along the line, we have this new age of pussy boy beta male software designers that think that everybody has to be caged in and protected from the Rottweiler, right? Because that's how you make money. If you have those people staying to play, they're gonna fucking buy they're the people that are gonna buy the microtransactions. They're gonna buy all that shit. And if they have a bad experience, because big bad Mr. 6 KD heavy man farms the fuck out of you, which I'll be honest, man. I've stopped giving a fuck about feeling bad for new players and shitters in the game. Very recently, I'm not playing by any rules anymore. I'm going to farm the living fuck out of your player base and unmercifully fucking farm the shit out of new players, because that's just what I'm going to do now. So you want to continually make my play experience as frustrating as possible, then I'm just going to do it right back to you. And I'll gladly watch as Rel destroys anything interesting or useful in his game to try to stop me. But you never will, because you're too stupid to figure out that you can't stop a player like that. So yeah, I don't agree with the change to Adrenaline Shield. It feels like a completely out of left field, like I've talked about before in another video. Like, he just can't help himself. So go ahead. I don't care. Nerf Adrenaline Shield again. Fuck. Why don't you just stop wasting time and remove the shield from the game? What? I mean, you're going to do that in like 4 or 5 years anyway, if this fucking shit game's still alive? Like, just remove it from the game if that's what you're going to do anyway. I mean, why pussyfoot around? Because apparently it's value enough for people who aren't good to not need to be nerfed, but it's too much value for people who are actually good at the game. So why not just take all the value, erase the value completely, and just take shields out of the game? If that's what you want to do anyway, then just do it already. Stop being a pussy. Or, when you write a dev note, actually write what you mean and not this little cryptic, vague bullshit that doesn't mean anything to anyone. So, I mean, basically that's the answer to my question, or to your question, is use whatever the fuck you want. Because if you're a good player, it doesn't matter. But just know that if you're a good player, whatever you're currently using is going to get nerfed by this moron, because he can only balance the game, since he doesn't understand the game, and he doesn't play the game or have any real understanding of how people actually play the game in reality, because he's a fucking shitter and doesn't play the game and is completely out of touch with reality. Yeah, just know that whatever you use as a good player is going to get attacked by this person, because the only fucking way to balance the game is via a spreadsheet and listening to bad players. So that's that. Next question is I'm not going to answer the fucking dumbass pain projection question about the Rube Goldberg implant setup. I don't care. You want to run auxiliary shield, like, be my guest, bro. I don't care. You want to run a bunch of dumb shit to still have a 2 KD and die to anyone better than you? I really don't give a fuck. Next question is from Solus. Streamer man, why disable comments on the skill gap compression video? So I disabled the comments on that video because I honestly meant for that video to be kind of like actually the last PlanetSide 2 content I do on the channel, and that's just it, right? I don't need. What do I need to see the comments for? What are the It's going to be people agreeing with me. It's going to be dumb retards disagreeing with me. Cool, whatever. The comments on that video, I could care less about, to be honest. And as of right now, that video is the last piece of PlanetSide 2 content that's like based on the game. As of right now, that's the last piece of content that I'm doing on this game, honestly. And I don't want to hear all the shit about, you know, why are you quitting, blah blah blah. I'm not quitting the game. I'm just not gonna do fucking. I've come to a point where, and I've been here before, but really solidly I'm here now where doing content that discusses gameplay design and balance things in this game is a complete and total waste of fucking time when you're trying to convince people who literally don't know what the fuck they're doing. Or if you're going to try to use logic and reasoning in terms of game design and balance and try to push that towards someone who just doesn't care about those things and only cares about what some terrible player is telling him on a Discord, what's the point? Like, I can't win that battle. I can't. I'm just never going to be able to. So what's the point? What's the point of making a video on medkits, or why the Beetlejuice nerf is, retarded? Like, what's the point? There's no point, because there's so few people that actually understand what the fuck's going on in the game. Like, just look at Reddit or the forums. The amount of people that comment and talk about the shit in this game that are just... Man, I really feel like 90% of the players in this game are the single... I only play one faction. I play very poorly or don't play FPS games at all. And I play a couple hours a week. Now, what the fuck... How am I going to convince a person like that? Like, honestly, if you want the perfect caricature of that person, go to any serious gaming video and look in the comments. Or, what's been funny for me, go to Cammy's videos and look in the comments there. Because Cammy's had sort of like a shift. And I think some of his community is not happy with that. Because Cammy's speaking out on things that are actually like legitimate concerns in the game. And for a long time, when all of your content is catered to shitters who only care about, armory, arsenal fucking videos and shit like that, like when they're presented with a counterpoint to the way they view the game, like they really don't like that. So that's been interesting for me to watch. But anyway, back to your fucking question. Why disable the comments on the skill gap compression video? I don't know, man. If you want to... Literally every other fucking video has comments available. If you want to comment on that video, go ahead and fucking comment anywhere else. Like, I don't care. The next question is from Lorenze Squeeze. If the update is too much for you to keep playing this game, will you turn your attention to another game or just stop content as a whole? Well, I kind of already answered this. I'll be stopping content on PlanetSide 2 indefinitely. Anyway, I'm still playing the game a fair amount, much more than I have in recent years. I'm also playing some other games on the side. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I'll still play the game, and if anything, I'll play the game to continue to show Rel that he's a moron. That no matter how many times you try to nerf me or compress the skill gap, like, it doesn't matter. Like, that's more of an incentive for me to play the game now than anything else, honestly. Next question is from Cordell98. Any advice to someone that's seeking or trying to get better, but they feel like they keep running into a wall to make that next leap? Equivalent to an athlete putting in the work to become a champion, but they don't ever accomplish that goal, like Charles Barkley or Patrick Ewing in the NBA. Well, the problem here is not everybody can be a winner, okay? The Charles Barkleys of the world, the Patrick Ewings, the Dan Marinos. There's a lot of people that are good enough to win, like championship-wise, but they just, for whatever reason, they just don't win it. Look at all the Bills teams from the early 90s. Great teams, never got over the hump. You know, that's just the nature of it. So you might be a player that, if you keep running into the wall over and over again, you might get over a couple walls, but at some point there might just be a cap. There might just be a limit to what you can be, or there might be a limit to how high you can go. You know, that's just the nature of shit. And if you don't have some innate talent that allows you to overcome that wall, then you've got to be happy enough to be like the Steve Kerrs, you know, or something like that, or I always feel like this is a bad comparison, but the Scottie Pippens, you know, Scottie Pippen was insanely fucking talented, but he always gets second billing because he's not Michael Jordan, right? But in terms of some people just need to. This is not to say don't ever stop trying, but at some point, you're going to reach a point where you need to accept what you are. The problem is that a lot of players, and specifically Planetside players, from the beginning, at like stage 1, minute 1, accept what they are. And that's what they're going to be forever. I have a problem with that mindset. But if you're someone who's legitimately and actively tried to improve, and you're hungry and trying to get better and doing all the things that you need to do, and it's just not coming for you, and for like years at a time, and you're just still stagnant, and there's nothing significant that you can really change about how you're playing, you might just need to accept that that's going to be the ceiling of what you do in the game. That's not something that a lot of people want to hear when they're pushing like that, because everyone's brought up to think that, oh, everybody's a winner. Everybody can reach their dreams and do all this, that, and the other, but that's objectively not true. Okay, there's always going to be winners and a whole lot of fucking losers. Way more fucking losers than there are winners. Okay? So, yeah. Keep trying, but when you're trying to improve there, you have to be extremely self-reflective. You know, you have to be willing to look at yourself and be like, okay, what's left for me to do different? Have I looked here? Have I looked here? What if I do this? What if I do that? And when you run out there and ask people on the outside, you know, what could I do better? And unless you're being specific, like, this is not a specific question. This is a very generalized question. But if someone had a very specific question for me, I could maybe point them in the right direction. I don't know. Anyway, Cordell cheats and gets another question in immediately thereafter and asks, of all three factions, which faction do you enjoy most for their weaponry? I mean, multiple guns you can use and not just stick to one or two and that be it. This answer has probably stayed the same almost the entire duration of the game, and that answer is the New Conglomerate. The New Conglomerate has the best arsenal in the game and the worst players, so it's kind of a nice balancing mechanic. So that's always been the case. If you look at LMGs, I mean, you always have the Saw, the God Saw, the Anchor, you know, some other shit. It was always fun to use. The carbines, a bunch of fucking good carbines. ARs, fucking great ARs. SMGs, literally the best SMG in the fucking game. You started with the fucking bolt action fucking rifle, man. Like, the max is insane. Like, God, the shotgun, like the jackhammer, like, people shit on the jackhammer, but the jackhammer is fun to use. it was always like you look at how many more ways you felt like you could play, and then it's like, well, shit, I'm back playing VS. I have to use the Orion or the Beetlejuice because everything else is kind of dog shit. And if I'm using something else, it's because I just want to be different. Or if I play LA on fucking VS, I'm like, well, I have the Serpent and the Pulsar. If I play fucking Medic on VS, I'm either using the HV45 or the Terminus. And the Max, yeah, whatever. Or for TR, I feel like TR is kind of in the same boat as the NC, but to be honest, I always enjoy playing TR and NC over VS. And that's now. I mean, how do you think it's going to be in like a week or so? I don't know, man. But that's my answer to it. I always enjoyed playing NC more. It's just the problem when you play NC and TR is that there's a noticeable drop off. Like when you go to the fights that I go to, generally there might only be one or maybe two other people fighting with me. And the drop off going from VS to NC or TR in terms of ability of that other person or two that's with you at that fight is night and day. Because if you're on VS on Emerald and you're going to those kind of fights, there might be like someone you know is on an alt that's at the fight with you, right? On NC and TR, I don't really encounter that as often. I encounter like your standard, I just happen to get lost run-of-the-mill shitters that are on NC. Because most of the 2KD good NC players are in a blob somewhere or they're sitting in pop. Same for the TR players, but the TR on Emerald are so devoid and barren of actual skilled players. It's kind of historically always been that way because the actual like good skilled TR players on that faction kind of got poached to either one of the other factions. But yeah, to answer your question, I enjoy playing NC for the Arsenal the most. It's just that the players around you are absolutely brain dead retarded. Next question is from Ritzy. What are your thoughts on the 2022 roadmap, not including the Arsenal update? No, sure. Well, to be honest, the Arsenal update, I did the Afflict Shocker podcast. That's actually probably a good thing to mention. I've been on a few things. I had been on with Leroy and Batty for a whole thing, and then I was on another thing with Leroy and Batty and Nept, who is the leader of Omni from the Battlefield competitive clan. And then I was on the Afflict Shocker pod a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the entire 2022 roadmap. So honestly, I only cared about the Arsenal update, and that was about it. So all the rest of it is total gimmick bullshit that I really couldn't give two fucks about. Yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Next question is from Cool Amp. Do you think that there's a state Infiltrator can reach in which it retains its identity as a class but still isn't unfair or bullshit? Longer cloak time, substantially less health than other infantry. What would do it? Well, I think the health thing has always been kind of it's kind of been in the design of the class, right? It always had, 100 less, shield? And that's fine. It's just over time when you power creep a class, and now you have basically a resist shielded heavy without the movement speed debuff running around as a cloaked infiltrator in a game that network-wise is one of the most horrible pieces of shit ever. It's just not a healthy thing for the game. And honestly, is there a state that Infiltrator can reach? Yeah, honestly, but the problem is they're never going to make any common sense changes to the class because the screeching. If you try to do something common sense like remove bolt action snipers and the ability to cloak, making those two mutually exclusive, if you try to do something like that, like you think the power knife whining was bad? Like there is a lot of scum shit players in this game who literally can only play Infiltrator and do nothing but body shot people. Okay? And if you touch their class at all, in any meaningful way, the screech, I just don't know why they would do anything to that when their hard line is nerfing the top 0.2% of players and the way they play the game. I don't ever see them trying to nerf the bottom fucking 30 to 50% of players. That's just not their modus operandi. That's just not what they do. So is there a state that it can reach and it's not totally stupid? Of course there is. But number one, it won't ever be tried. And number two, if it was tried, the screeching, it's just, I think it's a non-starter. I don't think it'll ever happen. It kind of is what it is. But it's one of those things in the game that is what it is, but they're not going to touch. Like you could say Adrenaline Shield is what it is, or the Beetlejuice is what it is, but they're always going to go after shit like that. But they don't, all they do is buff shit for Infiltrator, man. Like, they don't, besides, like, the one fucking time they've nerfed, you know, some dumbass playstyle that wasn't necessarily even tied to, like, the fucking one-hit kill knife shit. Like, is the one fucking time that I can think. The one absolute brain-dead retard gameplay style that's been in the game for a long time that they're like, maybe that's fucking stupid. Like, I can't think of another one that's been in the game that long that they were like, oh yeah, that's probably dumb. Because guess what, guys? That's only one of them. There's a lot more. You got a lot more work to do. Next question is from Kai. Did you eat much Korean food while I was in Korea, and was there anything that I particularly liked? I went out a fair bit. A lot of the shit that I had, I can't really say that it was necessarily, like, culturally Korean. But then again, I think, I don't know, like, I had a lot, I felt like the like, restaurants and shops that I went to, like, they did, like, fried chicken really well. Anything chicken, they always did really well. I went to a couple, I think there's a place in, fuck is this place called? There's a place that a city I used to go to all the time on the weekends and during the week. It's called Jihang. And there was a place there called Dino Meat. It's a beef and leaf, and if you don't know what a beef and leaf is, Google it and stuff like that. So everything there was good. Man, I've had some crazy good ass pizza there. A lot of the stuff that I had, like even the fast food there, like the McDonald's and all this shit, was better. In general, there wasn't really much that I didn't like, honestly. But I'm not sure how much like actual cultural Korean food I ate. Yeah. Skullrack asks, when is the beard coming back? I don't know. When I get fucking bored of shaving, I don't know. Maybe it grows faster in the summer, so maybe coming up soon. I'm not really sure. Next question is from Igor PS2. As we all know, bads will still get farmed after this next update. True. Do you think they will ever go far as to nerfing the 2x headshot multiplier or something like that in the future? Well, I know there used to be a lot more crying about it, and like so much crying that I specifically made a video talking about it. It seems to me like most of that has died down. But a lot of the whining about the 2x headshot multiplier was basically started by one of Serious Gaming's older videos was actually just a video crying about the 2x headshot multiplier. And for a long time, for several years, this man is something that he brought up and talked about from time to time. And the most dangerous part about shit players like Serious throwing their ideas into the ring is the man has a big following because shitters love that guy because he defends them and he's their moral protector. So all these shitters that follow him kind of agree with everything that he says and get that in their heads, and then they go spread that feces out into the world, you know. So I think he stopped talking about it for the most part because most good players and people who are actually intelligent can make a pretty reasonable argument as to why that's fucking stupid and you shouldn't do that. And we did, pretty much. So then he pretty much shut the fuck up about it. And when he shut the fuck up about it, his drones, his retarded viewer base basically shut the fuck up about it. And they moved on to whatever was the next, the next moral outrage in the game. Do I think that they would go ahead and nerf the 2 times headshot multiplier someday? Honestly, I couldn't put it past him. I mean, there's nothing that I think Rel would do that would surprise me at this point. Would it surprise me at all? Not in the least bit. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that's the thing. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. Because if you remove the 2 times headshot multiplier, there's literally no reason to play this game anymore. Because the 2 times headshot multiplier is one of the only bastions against numbers. Okay? Because the numbers of players in this game, the guys with the numbers are generally bad, and they don't headshot very much. And the guys that are against those numbers, or people like me who put themselves in positions to play against those kind of numbers, one of the only things I have to leverage against those odds and what's put against me is that multiplier and being able to do that damage. So maybe we just outed ourselves. I just gave him the answer to the test, and once you change the headshot multiplier, I will never play your game again because it's completely it's not worth playing at all. Because you're literally completely destroyed the skill gap in the game. Next question is from Bethesda. What discourages people from improving themselves most aside from the existence of shortcuts? This doesn't have to be tied solely to FPS games. It's your mental composition, your mental makeup, and how you look at things. Some of the responses to this are good, like not having the ability to realize how bad you are in the first place. You need a certain level of mastery to realize how much you don't know. And that gets back to the Dunning-Kruger fucking line graph, is, you have the person who starts out with very little knowledge of anything, and their certainty is this high, right? And then as they start learning more, their certainty fucking goes down like this, right? And there's a trough. And then you start to come back up with more. As you gain mastery, your certainty goes up. Now, there are some people that are here, but there are a lot of fucking PlanetSide players who are over here who don't know fucking anything about the game, but will tell you everything about the game. And you can find plenty of those people on Reddit. So yeah, the biggest thing I think, especially for people in this game, getting past and improving is breaking out of their bubble. I mentioned earlier in the QA about how I feel like 90% of the players in the game are one faction, non-FPS players who roll in a Zerg all day long. Now those are three things that combined make up their entire worldview. And to get into that, to break through that mindset and get into someone's head there is extremely difficult. And 99% of the time, those 3 things combined are just a hardened fucking, bomb shelter against everything else in the game. Because that's always what they default back to. Next question is from a land whale. When are you going to play Bloons Tower Defense? I don't know, bro. Leave me alone. Dan says, say you are kicked out of the USA by presidential order and you are never allowed back. Which country do I move to? I thought about this. It's probably Canada because Canada's like America Junior. And I wouldn't necessarily want to move to Europe. I've never been to Europe. I've been to some parts of Asia. But Europe, I don't know. I feel like I would just rather move to Canada, to be honest. I don't like the cold that much, but fuck. It's close. I kind of know some people there, maybe-ish. Anywhere else, I don't think. Like, I've lived in South Korea, but would I want to live there? I don't think so, man. Yeah, so my answer is Canada. I don't know where in Canada, Probably still on, I don't know, maybe, like Toronto. Like, I've been to Toronto. Yeah, that'd probably be my answer. Next question is from Last K's. Last KZ. Now that the Nanoweave is essentially being removed and Adren Shield is getting raped next patch, what do you think is next on the list for shitters to cry to Rel about? I think the biggest one that comes to mind is Assimilate. Yeah, Assimilate is a prime candidate because, I mean, the same argument you make for nerfing Adrenaline is that some people are getting, or we're seeing that it's giving too much value. Well, wouldn't Assimilate be kind of the same thing? Aren't I getting too much value from headshotting people since I headshot people so much? About half the people that I kill, I'm killing with headshots. That seems like too much value to me. So how Assimilate hasn't been nerfed yet, I don't really know. I assume that'll get destroyed eventually. What else you have? Well, we've dumpstered the Beetlejuice, we've dumpstered the Orion. You can always go back and do whatever fucking retarded medkit nerf that people want to do again. Like, I mean, really, whatever I use in the game is always susceptible to just getting annihilated and removed from the game to benefit shitters. So, like I said, it could be anything. I don't know. I don't put anything past Rel. Next question is from Cherry Sherry. What games do you think are going to be the next thing for retired PlanetSide players? It seems the new updates are repeated flops, gathering less and less attention, and that population is dropping dismally low. I think that the game will be unprofitable within the next couple of years. Do you think that the devs, Rel, and their supporters ever admit the negative impact their changes have had on the game? What would you do as a lead dev in Rel's place with the updates coming in 2022 roadmap? So there's a lot to unpack here. Focus camera, thank you. What games do you think are going to be the next thing for retired PlanetSide 2 players? I answered this question in a previous Q&A, and that's completely dependent on the individual person. For me, I play Battlefield games. I play Rainbow Six Siege. Like, there's a bunch of other stuff I play. It's completely dependent on the other person. In terms of the updates being flops and less attention, yeah, it was kind of... I was waiting to watch the spike of the population from the Osher update come up on FizzU. And it really didn't do much, which was I was kind of surprised at how little it did on the pops. Now, as for population dropping dismally low, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think populations are okay for what they've been in the last few years. Obviously, the big spike was during escalation, and we've kind of trickled down since then. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but they're relatively similar. It's something like, I don't know, 2,000 average players daily, something like that. Like, it's generally the same amount of people. Like, when I get on and play, there's like, and I'm playing in off hours now, and generally there's between 300 and 500 players on, ish, somewhere around there. Yeah, that's pretty normal. You think the game will be unprofitable within the next couple of years? I can't make that judgment. There's some terrible shit games that have barely any players that somehow are still profitable. I don't know. Do you think that the devs and their supporters ever admit the negative impact their changes have had on the game? Well, not really. They have a really hard time doing that because when they do that, they have to go back and address the things over and over and over again. So I guess in a sense, they kind of admit that they're wrong and they fucked up or they did something not correctly, because you constantly see them having to go back and work on the shit and reiterate on it over and over and over again. When a lot of the times it's a feature or a system or something like it, like that just needs to have the band-aid ripped off and dropped as a fucking stupid idea and a waste of time. I can't think of a better fucking example than construction and fucking water in the game. Two of the biggest, absolute fucking biggest wastes of time in this game. And how do they admit that they fuck up? Well, with construction, they double and triple and quadruple down on it, so they can't ever get out of their own way there. And with water, now you've made this shitty continent with this gimmick water mechanic. Now you have to spend half of your year or a quarter of your year like iterating on, like designing shit to go in the water that you made for no reason. Like, what do I do as a lead dev in Rel's place with the updates coming in the 2022 roadmap? That's an entire fucking like video in and of itself, and that's not something I'm that interested in you know, speculating about it. Like, fuck, man. Yeah, I can't answer that. Terminator asks, what was the first game and or first shooter? Are you asking mine, or is this a trivia question? Am I into non-shooters all that much? Well, since this is a Q&A about me, I'm assuming you're not asking me a fucking trivia question about what was the first game and or first shooter. What was my first game? My first game was fucking Super Mario Brothers on the Super Nintendo. I got a Super Nintendo for Christmas in like, I don't know what year, it was either 89 or 90. And that was the first game. That game and Aladdin on Super Nintendo, I think, were my first two games. And my first FPS game, maybe GoldenEye? But I don't even know if that's true, because I feel like I had played something on PC before that. That was a shooter game. Maybe one of the Dark Forces games? The Star Wars Dark Forces shit? Like, in the mid-90s, maybe? Something like that? I can't. I don't know, specifically. Am I into non-shooters all that much? Less and less as I get older, because as I stay in, I feel like I have to dedicate a certain amount of time to shooters, because it's a very, it's something that's like physically demanding, that is something that you have to do to maintain, especially as you get older. So the older I get, the less and less time I feel myself spending in other non-shooter type games. Honestly. Next question is from Yo Mama 3206. Have you tried Elden Ring? No, I haven't. I don't play Dark Souls games. I don't play any of that shit. I have no real opinion on it. Is there a way for crossplay integration to work without pissing off PC FPS players? Because I don't see a future without crossplay now that is becoming the norm. Yeah, you have to separate the aim assist has to be something not like just broken as fuck. Okay, first of all. So whatever we're doing with the aim assist nowadays needs to get toned back down to like whatever we were doing with it in like 2010. Okay, so that's first. In terms of crossplay integration, you need to disable controllers on PC. If you're using a PC, you have to use a mouse and keyboard. That's it. You don't get to use a fucking controller on PC just to get the aim assist, because fuck you. You're actual human garbage scum if you're playing an FPS game on PC with a controller to get the aim assist. Fuck you. You're trash. Yeah, most of the time I don't have a problem with crossplay. The main problem with crossplay is the cancer of the controller aim assist has completely ruined that arena. So come to your fucking, if these AAA developers would come to their fucking senses, which they're not going to. They don't care. Yeah. That'd be the way to do it. Question from Bolo. How was your time in South Korea, and can you give me your techno-ish music playlist that I hear in the background of streams? Well, I generally listen to two playlists, but those are for friends only, okay? So fuck you, you're not getting it. And how was my time in South Korea? Well, most of my time in South Korea was spent working. I had about 7 jobs in South Korea, because I was one of the only non-commissioned officers in the entire fucking unit, because we don't staff properly over there. I didn't have a lot of free time. Most of my free time was spent either watching movies or wandering out to the fucking bar district and getting hammered. and then returning to my cell. I didn't really get much time to travel. The only time I was in Seoul was doing something for the fucking unit. I've been to Pyeongtaek a few times. I drove across the fucking country with 2 other guys in a Humvee to return some Mark 19 rounds that we didn't have to return all the way down there. Basically, we drove from Camp Casey, which is in the northwest, up by the fucking north of Seoul, towards the DMZ. We drove a fucking Humvee down to Daegu, which is in the southeast corner of the fucking country, to return some unfired Mark 19 rounds, which it turns out our operations sergeant was a fucking moron. We didn't have to do that. We could have turned it in our normal spot, but he sent us on a fucking 18-hour drive across the fucking country. So that was fun. Yeah, other than that, I didn't get to travel too much. Most of the country that's outside of a city is kind of a shithole. I'll be honest. A lot of rural, like, run-down piece of shit fucking areas. It smells like shit everywhere. Every morning I walked out of the barracks and the town across from me, Dongdaecheon, smelled like fucking weed and shit. That was one of the few things I couldn't wait to get away from, is how bad that certain areas of that country fucking smelled. Everybody talks about South Korea like the only thing there is like Seoul and all this other shit, but there's a lot of other places outside of Seoul, and most of them are shitholes. Especially the area that I was in up in the north. So yeah, not a great fun time in South Korea, and one of my favorite places to leave. The only thing I enjoyed in South Korea was the food, and that was about it. Next question is from Euro Scumbag. Rel should step down, yes or no? Yeah, I don't care who replaces him, he needs to be gone. Belly Ranks question. If you could bring back Farmers League, including yourself, which 6 players, past and current, would you play with to assure victory? And what would a 16-squad tourney look like? Okay, we'll approach this one step at a time. Which 6 players would I play with? So it would be a 6-person team, so it would be 5 other players. Honestly, the team I played with in the original Farmers, it was me, Vizzy, Troy, Kylan, Technique, and who am I forgetting? Maxi. Either Maxi or kind of like a light assault spot. Maxi, Latch, Rope Chief, any one of those. Any of the guys that I played with back then, I mean, I wouldn't want to change that. I mean, we won everything with those guys pretty much. I wouldn't want to play with too many other teams, honestly. What would a 16-squad tourney look like? Well, it's funny you ask that, because you would never ever see a 16-squad tourney for that, because there's too many egos at stake. And that's part of the reason you didn't see that many teams back then anyway, because everyone was afraid. All these people who talk shit on live and all these awful shit players, they only care about their live reputation, and we cap bases and we're more committed to live play, blah, blah. Like, they would never bring a 6v6 team. As they do, and I mean, you saw some of them. Some people who did some things on live showed up at 6v6 and got their shit pushed in by actual real players, which is usually how it goes on live anyway. But that would never happen, because you would never be able to get those pussy-ass players to come and play in a 6v6 tournament against real players. You just wouldn't be able to do it, because they would be jeopardizing their fake, retarded, like, we cat bases on live ego shit. That is just, I mean, it's cringe as fuck. And that's a majority of them now anyway. So, I mean, yeah, so you'd kind of be stuck, like, having to get people who want to play it and enjoy it, which is kind of what the second season fell into, that for sure. We had to get a fucking Australian team to play. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer your question with that. That really wouldn't happen anymore. And if it did happen anymore, it would be like it would be the same people that you see now doing it. Bonus question, which PS2 streamers would you ask to cast to hype viewers? Man, to be honest, I don't watch a lot of PlanetSide 2 streamers. if I'm totally honest. I've been watching more, like, I've been watching Ryan a lot more lately. Um, Fuck, other than that, like, Soggy Cow, like, honestly, those are the two, and Shrimp. But other than that, like, I haven't really been fucking watching that much. Next question is from Kisfin. Ever thought of trying out Star Citizen if it ever hits a real solid point of content? Not in a million fucking years, no. Kaoru asks, what changes do you think would have to be implemented such that the average PS2 player would have an awakening regarding the abhorrent state of the game? Nothing, because the game is abhorrent and they thrive in that. You know, they're like in it, like a fungus in a fucking dark, cold, damp space. Like that's what they want to play. That's what they're happy in. You can't wake them up from that because that's what they want to exist in. That's why they play the game in the first place, because it's shit. Alex Buckley, what heavy assault thing is going to get nerfed next, and why will it be Adrenaline Shield again? I don't think it will be Adrenaline Shield again, or at least not right away. If I had to guess, it would either be Assimilate or Medkits. One of those two. That's my hunch. But yeah, that's it for the questions now. I tried to answer these more. Some of them I spent more time on. Some of them that were like real basic, I tried to get through fast as fuck because I really didn't want to do a two-part thing again. So yeah, that's that. Don't really be looking out for PlanetSide 2 content because I'm not going to be uploading it indefinitely for the time being. There's not much that I want to do with the game right now in terms of like talking about it and making videos on it. Like there's some unlisted videos I have of like some dumb shit that happens in the game that I upload, but I don't make public. But other than that, yeah, thanks for your support. I appreciate you guys hanging around even after I've basically wanted to fucking gouge my eyes out in frustration because of the people we have to deal with that are running the game. As always, you know, if you have suggestions or comments or things you want to see, like you can put them down. You can write them down. Like it doesn't necessarily mean I read all the comments. Okay, so if there's something there, you know, put it down. Will I do it? I don't know. I'm not gonna say I'm never gonna do content again for the game. But as of right now, I'm just seriously this Arsenal update and shit is like really turned me off to that whole thing. So anyway, I appreciate all you guys who ask questions. Again, thank you. You always give me a shit ton of questions to go through, and I do try to be thoughtful with some of my answers. Like I've been looking at the questions for a few days now and thinking about like, you know, what I want to talk about and stuff like that. But yeah, thanks for making another successful QA, and we'll see you next time.